Could we start in the next 2 minutes, please, so that we can give some more people a few minutes to join? All right. I believe we can start right now. So I hope I am audible to everyone. I am not breaking. Would you kindly confirm by reacting on the chat box? All right. That's good. So yeah, so my name is Brittany Nyangasi, and I will be your host for today for this session. Apologies to all of you. We had confused the timelines of when the meeting was to start. However, we are starting right now, and we can't wait to get this conversation rolling. So, like I said, my name is Brittany Nyangasi, and I will be your host for today. And joining me are two speakers who are Emmanuel Mwendwa Kiilu and Bravi. Oh, apologies for that. Uh, I don't know Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Can you guys hear me right now?
Yes,
Oh,
yes, we can hear you.
am I still breaking?
I think you should talk continuously so that we can identify.
I think the reason I could be breaking is when my video is on. Let me try that again. Is it more consistent right now? Okay, maybe we can just continue. Let me make the introductory remarks, then you will tell me if need may be, then I may have to disconnect my video. However, okay. Yeah. Here for the Echoes of Africanism podcast, and this is the Yajol series. And for this, we have two authors that wrote in the Yajol series, volume 5, Emmanuel Kiilu and Bravin Onditi. And they're going to help us unpack their paper on, the topic of their paper is Decoding the Future, African Parliaments, the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the AI Revolution. So, but before we start, I would like Mr. Dennis Munene to give us, to just come in as the ALF representative and give us more information about today. Dennis, if you can hear me, please go on.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Brittany. I hope I am audible. Let me see if I can have this one. Okay, good. Okay. Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible enough. And thank you. Thank you so much for to Emmanuel and Bravin for the good paper that you put together. And I couldn't say more, but just to say that I love the paper, Decoding the Future, African Parliaments, and before the Industrial Revolution and the artificial intelligence, sorry, and the artificial intelligence revolution. Okay. And this is very good addition to what we are working on the Young African Leaders Forum, Young African Leaders Forum Journal of Development, and looking at what both the others have really explored in Rwanda, Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, all through that. Like it's very incredible. It's very rich in content and also in what we're looking for and as a continent within each and every nation. So I'll just also be listening to be able to hear from the horse's mouth so that we can get more bits on what exactly maybe from getting from the mouth would also make it more simpler for us. But just to say congratulations to the team, that is both Emmanuel and Praveen for that paper. It's actually getting also incredible readership on the website and download as well. So that means it's a very unique research and policy paper that we hear today, listening from Emmanuel and Praveen. So just to keep on encouraging our viewers and all those people who are subscribing to Young African Leaders Forum to keep on reading and also to keep on participating. We're doing this more now on policy on the Aljodi, and also we're doing this more also on academia. So anyone who wants to participate on policy and also on academia can just always reach us through our email, info@yalf.africa. So welcome you this evening or this afternoon or this morning from where you're joining to be able to listen to our authors and then we can be able also to get more enriched on these specific areas on industrial revolution and also artificial intelligence. So thank you so much. Back to you, our host, Brittany. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dennis, for that. Indeed, you have expressed everyone's feelings here that we can't wait to see how. In fact, we already have our authors, so we can't wait to see more or to learn more from what was behind the article. Very quickly, I'd just like to move on now to the main part of this podcast. Perhaps we can have Bravin and Emmanuel. Would you kindly have your videos on and just introduce yourselves to us and tell us what you do? And yeah, that would be great.
I don't know if you guys can see, my camera is not well good with the lighting, but my name is Bravin Onditi. I'm a research assistant at the Horn Institute. That's why I work as a research assistant. Apart from that, I'm a founder of Nala Center, which is a youth-led think tank focusing on building capacity in young people, trying to help them how they can publish their work and nurture them in terms of writing and publishing. So maybe I have my background is international relational diplomacy. Yeah, maybe I could just stop here and let Emmanuel introduce himself as well.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Emmanuel, would you also go on?
Okay. On your side, I might not turn on my camera because we don't have lights still because of the heavy ongoing rains here in Machakos. So my name is Emmanuel Mwendo Kiilu. I'm a student at Strathmore University, pursuing Bachelor of Arts International Studies. I'm a writer and a researcher at your Commonwealth, which brings together young writers and scholars, and also I'm an independent researcher with various awards, and I'm also part of Nala Center as the head of research and policy. Yes.
That's great. Really nice that our two authors for today have background in research and are ardent researchers in their respective fields. So maybe we can just go right ahead into our topic for today, why our authors are here. And the purpose of their attendance today is to discuss and to tell us more about their paper, Decoding the Future, African Parliament, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and the AI Revolution. Sorry for that. So perhaps the first question I would ask you, just the two of you, I will take responses from the two of you, Brian and Emmanuel. Every research has a reason why the researcher went ahead and did it. Would you kindly tell us what was the inspiration behind your work? Maybe we can start with you, Emmanuel.
Okay, so our work was inspired. Actually, initially, our research began as a response, which was the call to papers, and it was the call for papers for the first or inaugural African Regional Conference on Parliament and Legislation, AFRIPAL, which took place in last year in June in Kampala, Uganda. So we were interested in exploring how emerging technologies, particularly at that time, artificial intelligence, with also the fourth industrial revolution, which we are already in progress, and how they are reshaping governance and even legislative institutions in Africa. So that was the main cause. So over time, we developed the papers, we developed the paper examining whether African parliaments are institutionally prepared and like to regulate and to oversee these frameworks technologies. And the work later, we presented it at the AfriPal conference in Kampala, Uganda. And our session for our paper presentation was titled Harnessing Artificial Intelligence and the Fourth Industrial Technologies for Legislative Efficiency in African Parliaments, and which later from the discussions with also other presenters and who had also different papers on how AI was being used in their various countries and in regards to various different parliaments. So interestingly, during the conference, we met Dr. Sombo Muzata. She's the assistant professor of political science at James Madison University. And so in our sessions, she served as the discussant in our panel session. Although that time neither I nor Bravin knew her, so she told us that we could publish our paper to be a journal in the Young African Leaders Journal of Development. And from that, we took the initiative and we shared the submission. And finally, our paper got accepted and we got it published. So the inspiration comes from a call of paper and then later trying to craft the paper, because normally when the call for paper, it was a bit huge research, but we tried now to condense it and also to try to align with the criteria for research at YALDO. So yes.
Great. I don't know if Bravin, you have anything else to add, but I think, okay, let me not cut you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. I think Emmanuel has already touched what our inspiration was. Maybe just to add on that also, as we know that the parliaments, our research focus on the parliaments, and we know that the parliaments are the democratic backbone of governance in Africa. And with the growing scholarship of AI in governance globally, the focus on parliaments specifically as opposed to governments generally remains a thin case. So in the African context, even more, we wanted to fill the gap also and to try and combine the parliament's legislative undercapacity and see how they can intersect with the nexus of African digital governance discuss. Maybe I can stop here.
Okay, that's nice. I see that you identified a gap in literature. In your literature review, you identified a gap, and you noted that there's nothing that there's no existing literature that talks about parliaments in this AI governance. All the people present here and the people watching us live on YouTube is that be on the lookout for such opportunities and be ready to even have your papers out there. Look out for calls for submitting papers and be ready to submit your research, because Africa needs such great thinkers among us. I've just seen a notification on my device that my internet connection is not stable. Am I breaking once again? Okay.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, I think I should just turn off my camera for now to have a smooth conversation. So, Bravin, your paper, you too, I see that in your paper you highlight significant disparity. You highlight significant disparity between the astounding rates of technological advancements and technological preparedness of most parliaments. Would you kindly elaborate on the most critical and structural institutional unpreparedness you found in your research?
Yeah, thank you. I think I will say hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I think I will say parliaments have not our parliaments have not evolved institutionally at the same pace as how technology are evolving as opposed to governance. Specifically, we identify that we have three interlocking deficit, whereby the first one is there's a near total absence of dedicated technology or AI committees in most of the African countries, as most African parliaments still channel technology issues through broadly framed them as ICT committees that focus primarily on infrastructure and telecommunications. Also on the governance implications of artificial intelligence. This means that when the executive deploys AI for border control, welfare distribution, or policing, there is no specialized parliamentary body positioned to maybe scrutinize it in that case. Also, maybe just to touch on the second point, there is a widespread of digital illiteracy among legislators themselves. Even in the case here, even here in Kenya, there's a time even our PS, our foreign affair PS, shared an AI video that had been doctored, and he was like, he thought it was credible, and he shared it through his social media platform. So this shows that lawmakers are largely generalists and without foundation of AI literacy, and they cannot engage with or challenge technically complex policy. Also, they have become dependent on executive briefing rather than trying to evolve and be on the, I would say, be on the updated. Yeah. Also, the third point is there's weak or absent parliamentary research services in the area of AI, and you can, as you know, that most of the member of parliament cannot independently analyze AI policy themselves. They don't understand these things. Most of them only know that AI is, like, they don't understand how AI is at large extent. They only know AI maybe in terms of maybe trying to come up with doctored photos, as we have been seeing in the previous circumstance, whereby there were photos of politicians being doctored and turning into AI images. Yeah. So maybe I should stop here.
Okay, thank you so much. In your comments, what I can read through your comment is that you emphasize that there's little investment in infrastructure, in making the information known to our members of parliament or our representatives in Africa about this AI. They don't know. And even the example you've given about Kenya, where a government representative, or was it a cabinet secretary, once shared, called an image doctored, or he shared an image and it was not a real image. So there's a real problem that in that area. Perhaps I can turn this question to Emmanuel next. You know, I once attended a conference where it was a conference like this one, and a speaker was talking about their research, and she said that a theoretical framework is the most important part of our research. It just makes your research to make sense. So Emmanuel, what would you say? Okay, I see you used different theoretical frameworks in your research. You used technological determinism, institutional theory, and governance innovation theory as your theoretical frameworks. How did applying these specific theories help to better explain the African context in your paper?
Okay, thank you so much, Brittany. So in regards to answering your question, in regards to the three theoretical frameworks which we used, I'll begin with technological determinism. And so this draws from McLuhan's foundational work. It helped us to make the argument that AI is not a passive tool, but a force that reshapes the power structures. And for many African parliaments, this is a cautionary insight. And this is whereby if legislators do not proactively engage with the artificial intelligence and the technologies, it is going to it's going to continue to reorganize governance around them, and it can leave them like at the marginal end, and it can also be reactive. And also this framing elevated the urgency of the issue beyond mere just policy referencing. And when you look at it from institutional theory, this is grounded in North's framework of a formal rule and the informal norms and enforcement mechanisms that are most of the time critical for explaining why some parliaments adapt to technological change more readily than others. And African legislatures in this context carry the institutional legacies of colonial governance characterized by dominance, executive, and weak legislative independence. And when you look at these inherited structures are slowly to change, and even sometimes they create a very deep like path of dependencies that resist to innovation. And when you look at it from these lenses of institutional theory, there's sometimes it prevents us from treating the governance gap as a simple resource problem, and it is more fundamentally like structural and historical, because uh, in institutional theory it looks at how institution responds to various issues in different communities and societies. And when it comes to governance innovation theory, this one, this theory gave us like the normative and forward-looking framework, and it challenges us to ask not just about what parliaments are currently doing, but what they should be doing. And this is like becoming more proactive and engaging, participatory, and even responsive institution in the digital age. And this theory in this context was used especially whereby African democracies remain fragile and where the legitimacy of AI-driven decision depends on public trust, and something fragile democracies can ill afford to lose in the end of the day. And so the three frameworks give us like the multi-layered analytical architecture that no single technical lenses could have like provided what we were researching on in this regards.
That is great. I love how you have explained each theory and how it helped your research, particularly the institutional theory, and how legacies of colonialism and colonial structures make Parliament view these technologies, how they view them today, and make even the uptake difficult for these members of Parliament. Great. Now, maybe we can move on to the case studies part, where you speak of the case studies, as even Dennis mentioned in his opening remarks. You talk about studies in Rwanda, Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria. So maybe I will turn the focus now to Bravi. Which of these countries as you studied them, did you find the most proactive, and what actions set them apart from the rest?
Thank you. I think I will say South Africa stands out as the most structural proactive country. With it, South Africa in this case, it's the country among the 4 case studies that we use in our research, also in our paper. And when you compare South Africa among the 4 countries, South Africa has developed dedicated institutional infrastructure for AI through the AI Institute of South Africa that was established in 2022, and it has put in place comprehensive legislation that touches on digital ethics, specifically through the Cyber Act of 2020. Also, the South African Parliament has actively engaged in public discussions on AI and its employment implications with the citizens, a level that legislative initiative have not yet matched. So also, the institute also, I think, has helped in putting together a Protection of Personal Information Act, or we can say it POPIA, which represents the continent's most substantial attempt to set standard for automated decision making and data use. Even in enforcement, which remains a significant challenge, the South Africa has also integrated and AI and coding into national education curriculum, demonstrates that they are fired compared to these 4 countries in the 4th industrial revolutions. when I come to Rwanda, I would say Rwanda deserves maybe an honorable mention because it has a national digital transformative strategy, which it embeds AI policy within a broader national vision. Also, they demonstrate a strong direction that they are developing a national AI research center, which in this case it's like the South Africa AI Institute. It like trying to see how the parliament can engage and remain in a consultative with the executive in the parliament. So when I come to Kenya and Nigeria, we Kenya in this case, Kenya has an AI task force. Also, just I think 2 weeks or 1 week, 2 weeks ago, we had a Nairobi AI summit. Yeah, I think Kenya is doing great in this manner. When you come to Nigeria, Nigeria also has a 2023 national AI policy draft, which is still largely in consultative process. I believe so, and so I would say among the focused studies that you use, South Africa is I would say it's far ahead in terms of institutional infrastructure, parliamentary engagement, even legislative action in this case. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your observations in that. Maybe just it got me thinking. When you were writing your paper, was it before Kenya adopted the recently adopted artificial intelligence AI strategy? Maybe just a question.
Yeah. Because this paper we wrote it last year around June, July, and is that okay, Manuel? That's where we did the conference presentation.
Okay, and I think the Kenyan AI strategy came about, was it in April? Well, I may need to check on that, but around some time there. So it is amazing how these countries are working hard to ensure that they legislate or they have legal conversation around this topic. And we hope in future, because now this is, as you've already even written about it, this is a topic hot on people's mouths. So we expect more African countries to take on it and discuss it even more in their parliaments. So perhaps to Emmanuel, recently, it is common knowledge, or this is what people say, that data has been christened as the new oil. It is called oil these days. So what would you say are the most immediate risks to a nation's digital sovereignty when its data infrastructure is primarily externally controlled?
Okay, thank you so much once again for the question, moderator. So first, I'll maybe begin with what, from my understanding and from what you wrote, and what like digital sovereignty is like basically a country's ability to control its own digital environment, and this is like data infrastructure and the AI system in this regards. And when most of that is controlled by foreign companies, there are some serious and even immediate risk. And most of the time, you'll find the first is jurisdiction vulnerability. And this is whereby if your data is stored on a cloud owned by a foreign company, it's subject to that country's laws and not yours. So it means sometimes sensitive government information, citizens' data, or even national security communication could in theory be accessed by foreign governments, and essentially it can undermine countries' ability to make its decisions independently. And the other second risk, maybe we could say it's algorithm dependency. And this is whereby if AI systems are designed abroad and they're deployed here without proper oversight, they carry the biases and priorities of their creators, and I think if there was a time on LinkedIn, one of the some of the people highlighted some of the issues concerning with some of the AI tools which were being biased when you were asking them certain questions in that regards. And also you can find that they aren't built or like built for African languages and even sometimes maybe local context or even our rights framework. And in another way is a form of like digital neocolonialism, which sometimes people have been also highlighting it, and our citizens are being governed by system designed for someone else in someone else's context. And maybe that risk which I can recall is maybe accountability gap, and maybe it's when decisions by AI like a denied welfare application or a flagged ID can go wrong, and there are often no like domestic body to hold accountable in this regards. So the trail ends at a foreign company and maybe not a local institution. And for example, when you look at the United Nations Economic Commission, has highlighted how this problem sometimes gets worse, and we can even digitize faster than when we invest in cybersecurity. So maybe we can think, or maybe what are the solutions? Maybe we can think and say policies that keep data local, and also investment in local cloud infrastructure, and also laws that protect data sovereignty. And these, they are not just only technical measures, but they are also deeply political, and they should be supported by good and strong political will. And they are a matter for democracy, accountability, and also ensuring African countries have control of their own digital future. When you look at it in per se of what are like some of the issues which have been ongoing in regards to like data insecurity.
Amazing. Thank you so much for those important points. I liked how you gave the problems that face this data when or face digital infrastructure when they are externally controlled, and how you provided solutions. And just maybe to add on that, perhaps we can, as European countries do, or as it is in Europe, when data is managed externally, when data is collected from European nations and it is controlled by external people, they're called the General Data Protection Guidelines of the European Union, provide that these external controllers of data need to have the same safeguards as provided for under these laws of Europe. Perhaps we can have such policies that ensure that African data is protected, or African digital infrastructure is protected, and it is not subject to manipulation, because once it leaves our hands, then we have no control over what happens without the strong safeguards that we need to. Great. I love how this conversation is going. Just to the audience, perhaps you can continue to send in your questions, and we are going to pose them to the speakers later on when we are done with this conversation. Great. Moving on swiftly, maybe the next question I will pose it to Bravin. So Bravin, in your paper, you mentioned that most African parliaments lack specialized committees and are largely digitally illiterate. You've also said this before. So how does this specific lack of internal capacity impact the ability to provide effective oversight of executive as use of AI technology?
Thank you. I believe there's a connection between digital illiteracy and failed oversight, because if effective parliamentary oversight requires that legislators can ask the right questions, interpret technical evidence, and hold the executive to account when technologies are misused. Like in the case where we had like there's a time people are, it was I think WorldCoin, yeah, where people are lining up at KICC to be scanned so that they can get money. So that's a good example. I think there was like there was not an oversight because the company was given a permit to operate in Kenya, and later on they realized that this company is collecting people's data. So yeah, also the in terms of maybe facial recognition as an example, which I've talked about, this technology is increasing being adopted by law enforcement and border agency across the continent. You have seen the case recently, even in US, you see the Trump is using eyes to be able to be able to track the illegal immigrants and deport them. And what you will realize that ICE is using these technologies, is using Palantir, which is an AI like development technology that scans people, and after scanning them, they can be able to search in their digital footprint and be able to see if they are US citizens or they are illegal immigrants. Yeah. So also maybe just to add on, the absence of specialized AI or technology committees means that there is no designated institutions to oversight these cases, and issues get absorbed into the broader ICT committees in the African countries in this case, and security committees that lack the mandate or expertise to integrate AI's specific implications, and the result is that implementations of highly continuous technology, such as the predictive policing and biometric surveillance, proceed with the cover of small, opaque governing institutions rather than scrutiny and democratic legislations. So maybe just to say, one of the solutions that we provided in our paper, it was like simply training individuals' legislature. It's fundamental about institutional capacity. Also, creating maybe a dedicated AI oversity like Kenya, the AI task force here. I think that's a good road that we're heading to. Also, recruiting technical staff who have the capacity and in terms of these technologies, and mandating in a logarithm impact assessment. Yeah, maybe just to stop there.
Thank you once again. For the non-Kenyan audience that is joining us, the World Coin saga was a big problem in this country, where I think it was the CEO of OpenAI came to Kenya, and people were lining up to get their iris scanned, or that is biometric information to be taken so that they get money. And it is quite unfortunate that they're placed in such a situation, and people who just sign up to it because of the problems they take and the problems they had. And it is also unfortunate that this happened while we have a legislature that is existing. We did not have policies, or there was no one to stop it and say, hey, no, you cannot collect people's data and take it or use it for some purpose that you're not telling people. So this just reinforces the points they're making. When we have legislatures that are digitally illiterate, we see the problems that this causes to people. Yeah, this conversation is going on well. Perhaps we can move on now to Emmanuel. Would you kindly discuss a specific instance from your research where a lack of a timely legislative action directly worsened social or economic inequality in one case study country?
Okay, thank you once again. So using one of the case studies which was in our paper, maybe I'll say the Kenyan's Huduma Number digital ID system. When you look at how this initiative was designed to consolidate citizens' identity information and even make access to public services more efficient. So in the paper, it looked like a major step forward in digital governance, but in reality, because there was no comprehensive at the time AI legislation or stronger parliamentary oversight in place, its rollout actually highlighted and even reinforced existing inequalities. For instance, people without the required documents, including marginalized communities, rural population, people who live near the borderline between Kenya and other countries, and even stateless individuals. And a few of informal sector workers face the risk of being excluded from essential services. And when civil society came out and even challenged the program in court, the decision now focused on issues like data protection, consent, and even the potential for the system to entrench inequality rather than alleviate it. And also, we can say it like Parliament had not yet established like clear regulations on the digital rights or AI governance that could have guided the program design from the start. And so we can largely to the bigger part say this example highlights or reflects the broader pattern we saw across the study, whereby legislative actions often lag behind technological deployment, because if Parliament had done more research in regards to the upcoming technologies which were coming, they could have avoided some of the issues. And in the context of because there's always, in many societies, including Kenya, there is always the gap between the rich and the poor. And so this lag, we can see it like it's not neutral. And also, if maybe there were early AI implementation, they can serve the state or corporate priorities, and also while the communities as well. So the key takeaway is that the timing matters enormously when it comes to governing AI and other technologies. And at the moment, the government learned from that time. So over time, there is more consultation whereby people are being included when it comes to public engagement in some of the processes that entails the collection of implement of new systems. Yes.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for that. Now, Bravin, your paper recommends, a key recommendation in your paper is for Africa to have a harmonized legal framework across the continent in line with the existing African Union Malabo Convention. So, what would you say is the biggest obstacle preventing this continental cooperation to ensure that there is alignment in the laws across the continent on artificial intelligence and even artificial intelligence?
I think the biggest obstacle is the ratification and enforcement gap at the national levels. As you know, the AU Malabo Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection has existed since 2014, and yet more than a decade ago, it's only few countries that have ratified this convention, which means only a small number of African Union member states. The convention cannot enter into force without being cannot enter into force and also be binding in terms of uniting all the African countries without all the African countries being ratifying and amending their signature on it. This, as you know, reflects a deeper structural problem. As African states have shown a consistent pattern of they endorse a continental framework when they are meeting at the African Union level, and they fail to domesticate it and implement them at their national legislative process. And why does this gap persist? There's a combination of factors that exist. There's executive legislator which disconnect the head of state of the AU level and the national level. Also, another disconnect them in terms of their priority at the AU and at home. Also, parliaments are often uninformed about this and disengaged from continental norms setting process. And the technical complexity of AI governance legislation make it a low political priority for them. Yeah, as even in the AU right now, if you try to see what's their top priority, we discover that AU is not among their top priority. There are some things that they are up on the list of priority, but AI is not among them. Yeah. Also, maybe to add on that, the regulatory at the national level, this continental alignment. Countries develop their own social data protection, cybersecurity, or AI referencing the continental frameworks. This creates incompatible regulatory environments that impede cross-border data flows and regional data market integration. And the Smart African Alliance and the regional economic communities like ECOWAS and EAC are working on harmonization, but without parliamentary, like their national parliament buying into this and domesticating it, these frameworks, this cannot be effective. So I think the solution lies in breaching the AU Parliament gap and creating formal linkages between the African Union digital governance processes and the work of national parliaments, supported by maybe Pan-African parliaments as a continental legislative forum to harmonize these processes.
Thank you so much, Bravin, for that. Maybe I can just turn a question to the plenary, all of the attendees in this meeting, and even those joining us or watching us live on YouTube. You can just type out in the chat box if your country, or if your country has ratified the African Union Malabo Convention on personal data protection and cyber security. Just it out in the comments. In this meeting, we have representation, and also this raises the question of are our countries monist on dual lists or dual lists in terms of ratifying these treaties, so that it means that when these treaties, when these African heads of state meet at such meetings in the African Union, when they meet, let's say in Malabo for this convention, and they pass this, they say we as a continent are going to adopt this law. What does it
I think you're breaking.
mean for adoption locally? Yeah. What does it mean? Are they taken? Does it mean that breaking right now? I was talking about the whole conversation of monist and dualists. How do we uptake these laws? How, when they are signed, what happens when countries sign them? Are they just taken directly? Yes. So that is a conversation we need to have. And even we as young African leaders, we need to push so that these laws are taken up easily by our cast to move now to the conclusion. So Bravin and Emmanuel, in your paper, the conclusion quotes Yuval Noah Harari, emphasizing that tech offers choices and we must take responsibility for them. In your opinion, what is the most critical choice African parliaments must make in the next 5 years to shape the digital future positively? Maybe we can start with Emmanuel this time.
Okay, thank you so much once again. So maybe I will frame the most critical choice as the question of digital sovereignty versus digital dependency, and whereby at the moment Africa faces a fork in the road, and it can continue to import AI system, cloud infrastructure, and regulatory frameworks from abroad, which is the path of at least we can say like short-term resistant, or it can invest in the building of domestic AI ecosystem, local data governance capacity, local data governance capacity, and also indigenous regulatory frameworks rooted in African values and realities. And in African values, we talk about something called Ubuntu. And maybe in the second path, which is a bit more harder and even more expensive and even requires a level of political will and even continental coordination, as Bravin mentioned, and that has historically been difficult to sustain most of the time. And but like this is not the only path that leads to a genuine technological self-determination, but we can have a continent that governs its artificial intelligence on term sets elsewhere by maybe Silicon Valley companies or Beijing-backed platforms, and that is not like truly governing itself. So when you put Yuval Noah Harari quotes, the warning resonates that most powerfully here, if we don't take responsibility for the choices that AI presents, we risk discovering that we have lost control, not just only of our technology, but also even of our democratic values. Because in the end of it, we will be championing not what we want, but what maybe others think they want for us or they think it's good for us. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, maybe I think the most critical choice, in my view, is the choice between reactive and proactive governance. And every parliament, by default, will respond to this of unregulated AI, whether through scandals, maybe social unrest in their countries after something has happened. Like in this case, Kenya, where after there was a social unrest among the people calling out on social media why our people are being scanned data. That's where the government took an action and decided to look into this matter, and they revoked the license they had awarded the company. So yeah, I think I think maybe just to add on that, I believe the single most critical institution choice is whether to make AI governance a formal standing part of the parliament mandate, or are dedicated in terms of dedicating structures and budget and stuff, or to leave it as occasional agenda item absorbed by committees built by from different areas. So yeah, and just maybe the institution will determine whether they downstream whether this thing is important to their citizens or it's not, and the quality of oversight and the integrity of legislation and the degree to which African democracy can hold both the state and private sector accountable in the age of AI.
Wow, thank you so much, Emmanuel Mwendwa and Bravin Onditi, for your insight and taking us through your research. Indeed, it has been a great research, learning from you and learning the inspiration behind your paper, and even sharing this knowledge with us. It has been amazing. I think one thing I have gotten from your conclusion and what Emmanuel talked about, integrating indigenous ethics like Ubuntu into AI governance, and what you've talked about, Bravin, including structures and agendas and even budgeting for artificial intelligence and its adoption in Africa. This really will make African parliaments to shape our digital future, for say in the next 5 or 10 years from now. I believe we've had a very fruitful conversation, and thank you all for joining us. Thank you so much, Bravin and Emmanuel, for honoring the invite and even submitting your paper with the Young African Leaders Journal of Development. It is indeed an honor to have you here with us and share your insight on this topic. I see somebody has raised their hand. That is Florian. Florian, would you like to say something? Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Madam Brittany, for moderating that high-level dialogue concerning about African development in general. Thank you so much for wonderful work, especially to everyone who have been here as a guest speaker, as a as a as a contributor and speaker. Thank you so much for those who are following us. But I have something to to add, and it's all about how are we going to make things happen in Africa. For my for my from my own perspective, I believe that the AI revolution offers Africa a historic opportunity to transform our economies, and also it will help to transform our societies and governance system. But for Africa to develop and to succeed, Africa must not remain a passive consumer of imported technologies. We must become a co-creator of our solution that will reflect our own values and realities. And the African Union, together the Pan-African Parliament, still they have a vital role to play in guiding the processes. By harmonizing policies across member states, safeguarding data sovereignty, promoting ethical standards, at least this will ensure AI adoption is both responsible and inclusive. And shortly, let me say this. The government also, they can invest in regional innovation hubs. For example, in Tanzania, you see there is a Funguo program. Funguo in English is key. Funguo key in Swahili. So Funguo program is to facilitate and empower young people when it comes to digital innovation and creativity. So I think if some of the African governments should invest in that regional innovation together, I think we'll go somewhere as a continent. So thank you so much, Onditi.
Thank you so much, Florian, for reiterating those views and even explaining more on how and on the role of the African Union and African governments, and even giving the Tanzanian experience. Unless anyone has a question that they would also like to raise or a comment. Okay. I believe no one else has something to say. Perhaps Dennis can come in and say something, and that will be all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Brittany, for good moderating of today's session. And I'm glad also for our two guests, that is Bravino Onditi and Emmanuel Mwanda Kiilu, for that good analysis of what you've really worked on. And all those who've been in attendance. Our vice is also here, Mr. Florian, and also Anna, and Loveda as well, also joining in. So and so many others who have been seeing on YouTube, and so many others who will watch later. So I think it's been quite an amazing opportunity to hear from both the writers of this great journal. And I can really assure you that I think this is one thing that we looking to have for so many young people. We need so many young people within the continent who are researchers, who are writers of what we really need within the continent. Just to reiterate what Mr. VP has also shared, when those homegrown based solutions within the continent, and that has to come from the young people. And for those of us who are reading the journal, we can be able to conquer. We've gotten this concurrement from the likes of Prof. PLO Lumumba. On all these papers, they've been going through them, and they can really agree with us with this kind of call. We can have get to so many young people and have them on board on sharing this. And as Young African Leaders Forum, will keep on pushing this to the AU, to this government, and see what best can be able to be done within the continent. And on our work, we shall keep on working this way. And I can't wait to see what Bravin and Emmanuel and so many other young people will come up with on the next journal that will be working on this year. and also on the next year. So especially for this year, we'll be doing more on academics, and then next year we'll be back on the policy. So I just want to be able to see so many of us come up with these good solutions, because we've seen professors write so many dissertations, all those things, but they pile up on the libraries. But we want to see such kind of arena where we have young people dealing on technology, industrialization, agriculture, mechanization, and things really working out. So thank you so much, Brittany. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. And thank you so much, Bravin. Looking forward to seeing you soon again. Thank you.
Thank you again for the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.